Welcome, everybody, to this Bliss Dance Gather Round. Hi. If you would like to put on your videos just so that we can see each other and greet each other. And the invitation always with Bliss Dance is to feel really comfortable in your body, to be at ease, to be in pleasure. And so, just making yourself nice and comfortable. Let's take a moment just to land here in our bodies by closing our eyes, taking 3 deep breaths in through the nose, and sigh the breath out through an open mouth. You can sigh it out with some sound, so it's a deep And then I invite you to place your hands over your heart and imagine that you're looking down into your heart space and feel the shape of your heart. Feel it in all its dimensions. Feel the front of your heart, the back of your heart. Feel the top and the bottom of your heart, the diagonal dimensions of your heart. You might also want to move your hands a little away from your heart and feel the energetics of your heart. The field of our heart is much greater than our physical limit. Just feeling the frequency of your own heart. Feeling it from the inside out. So taking your awareness inside your heart. Rather than thinking about your heart, you're actually inhabiting the inside of your heart. And as we rest here in our hearts, I want to ask your heart a question. And the question is, what does your heart deeply, deeply desire from this session that we're having together? What is it that you most yearn to know or to embody or to teach and transmit using medicine, the medicine of movement and music, bliss dance practices? What is it that's calling you? What has piqued your interest? Just spend a moment in quietness and silence, asking your heart, what does it deeply long for? What does it want? And when you feel that you have the answer from your heart, You can maybe just give some thanks in whichever way you choose to give thanks. And we can come back to this time space, to the present, opening our eyes, keeping the focus of the eyes soft and diffused. Just imagining your eyes are holes for the light to penetrate. And you might have been surprised by the answer that comes from your heart rather than from your head. And so I'd love, as part of our introduction to each other, for you to type into the chat. So open the chat, and in the chat, type in where you are in the world and what did your heart answer. So we can all do that. It can be something very simple, might be something quite small for this moment, or it could be something quite grand. And every answer is valid, every answer is equally important and beautiful. And as the answers come in, just take a moment to witness the beautiful people on this call and what is calling them. Yeah, beautiful. I'm loving hearing the messages from your heart. Exquisite, beautiful, beautiful heart messages. And hopefully we can help support the deep desire that is calling you. And for most of us, it's to be more of who we are and to really love ourselves exactly as we are. And then from that place of deep self-love, to know who we are and what is our special medicine, what is our gift, what is the thing that we want to do in service, something that is greater than ourselves. I think most people who are medicine people want to serve in some way, in their own unique and special way. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for the answers. And yeah, we're from all over, I see. Berlin, South Africa, Cape Town, quite a lot of Cape Town, New Zealand, where Rayven is, my co-facilitator. So feel a very, very warm welcome. And as we always say in BlissDance, the invitation is to bring all of yourself to the space. We don't have any preference or avoidance for any particular aspect of self. The mad, the bad, the sad, the shadow, the light, the dark, your sexuality, your spirituality. Every part of you is equally welcome, just as you are. And it really is a sincere invitation. When we say this, we mean it. So feel at home. This is your place. This is your space to really feel at home, just as you are. And so what we thought we'd do tonight is Rayven and I will speak a little bit about bliss dance, what it is as a conscious dance modality, and what makes it different perhaps to other conscious dance modalities, and what we believe its real strengths are and benefits. And having already taught a one-year class for previous first-year students, we feel a lot more comfortable actually speaking about what it is that Bliss Dance offers. I think a year ago we weren't quite sure. And so we want to speak a little bit about Bliss Dance from our own experience and from the experience of teaching 29 students just over a year ago. And then we're going to open it up to the floor, where you are truly welcome to ask us anything, absolutely anything. And we'll do our best to answer, not from our heads, but really from our own embodied total experience of bliss dance. So I'd like to introduce Rayven, who is actually South African and has been part of the tantric community in Cape Town for a very long time. And Rayven was also a student of Shakti's, as was I. And both of us trained in bliss dance with beloved Shakti Malan. And we've kept our bliss dance connection over the years, even after Shakti's passing. About 7 or 8 years ago, we have continued to carry the torch, the flame of bliss dance, which is a modality that Shakti Malan developed out of her experience with Biodanza, with Tantra, with Qigong, with Buddhism, meditation, and she brought all of those threads into this beautiful modality, which we, I guess we summarize it as a tantric practice, movement practice of awakening. And it awakens us to a deeper hunger, thirst for truth, for love, for connection, for intimacy, for beauty, for peace. It's what we all yearn for, and it awakens us to these aspects of life that we all yearn for. We all yearn for more connection, for more love, for more truth, for more clarity. And the bliss dance practices that we do repeatedly over and over again, because they are spiritual embodied practices, take us deeper and deeper and deeper into these aspects of what it is to be intimately present with all that life has to offer. And as a totality tantric practice, it includes everything and it leaves nothing out. And we'll talk a little bit more about how comprehensive bliss dance is, and the totality tantric map that we use to create dance journeys, and to draw on the different bliss dance practices to give dancers very deep and very profound experiences. And in one class can be completely life-changing, because Tantra doesn't do shallow. Tantra takes us into the deep, deep, deep. And so with that, I want to hand over to Rayven. And we've danced many years together as lovers of truth, as lovers of life, as lovers of love. And and when we dance like this, as dancers, as lovers, it creates such deep connection and such a deep knowing of each other, even though we're always ultimately a mystery. It's that weird paradox. I never know, Rayven, but I do know. So Rayven, I'd love you to talk a little bit about your path, how you came to BlissDance, and your personal experience of it, and what do you feel as a teacher um, about about why you love BlissDance.
Mm, thank you, Kylie. And I just want to add as well, in your welcoming of all that we bring, is just to very specifically welcome in our humanity. And I say this, I've just returned from a festival, and one of the conversations I was noticing is just this incredible confusion around everything that's happening in the world at the moment. And this sense of helplessness and this question of like, well, what is this little human here do in the face of so much uncertainty, so much confusion, um, and what it always comes down to, and this really ties in with what Cardi was saying, is that the very best thing that we can ever possibly do is keep returning into ourselves and to find what it is that is our greatest expression, that is our greatest love that we want to share with the world, and to find opportunities to open that and express it. And the humanness is sometimes that's messy, but that striving, that intention, that willingness to be in that messiness and to just keep expressing and keep allowing who we are to shine out and have it reflected back, I think really is the most fundamental thing that we can possibly do for anything, because ultimately that is going to reflect out in some way. And the great mystery is we have no idea what that ultimate impact is, and it doesn't matter. There's something that gets created when we are in our truth, in our dharma. So yeah, a little bit about the history. I'm always amused at kind of how we got into this, and my experience with conscious dance certainly started before I met Shakti. Um, but my experience as a facilitator was very much driven by Shakti, kind of a baptism by fire. She really threw me into it. And at that stage, there was no training as such. We really had to kind of learn on our feet. There was something from where it comes from, which is beer done. So just acknowledge that was a root of what Shakti created, and certainly I got something from that. But I think what's been most exciting for me is now having done this year, as Carly said, it wasn't that we couldn't describe what it was before, but there's something about having done this year already of training this where it's just really sunk into something very structured, very concrete, um, and a much more tangible way of being able to express it. And I'm super excited about that because certainly we've been on our individual journeys, and yet it's sort of come together in such an aligned way. Maybe that's the lover aspect that you're talking about. Just there's this incredible alignment and this thinking that comes through and just flows very naturally. And well, if I think back to my original Bliss Dance classes, and I have to say it wasn't easy. I didn't go, oh, I'm going to go to Bliss Dance, every week, but I went consistently every week as a practice, going, oh my gosh, I'm dreading this. This is this is so intimidating, because it really got me to confront myself in ways that I hadn't really been able to before. And I'm a head person. One of my other hats is in IT. I have a overactive thinking brain. So be able to get into a space that was nonverbal, that used the expression, the movement, the spontaneity, the aliveness, the inspiration that came through in that space, to have these meetings with myself and with other people, without an opportunity to think about it and intellectualize it, but just to witness and just to be an experience, was profound. really, really profound. It's I have so many incredible memories from that. I'm in New Zealand at the moment. I'm going to be visiting South Africa from mid-April for a few weeks, and I'm going to be doing a bliss dance. And I was thinking about that, and this is going to be quite emotional. There's really going to be an incredible reflection back into the journey that I've done right from the beginning. So I'm a little bit nervous about that, but at the same time, super excited. It's been an amazing journey and certainly significant. And I can't say that there is anything that I would facilitate without bringing some aspect of bliss dance into it, because it is that powerful. Even if the topic is something else entirely, or we're working with maybe yoga or meditation or breathwork or whatever it is, that bliss dance still comes into it. And I see again and again this, particularly when it's new people, there's this initial like, oh, we've got to dance and that's exposing and I don't know how to do it and that's awkward. And we've got this modality that's just so beautifully allowing that says that that can be there for sure. Bring it in and let it go at the same time and see what happens. And it melts away so fast. But there was one retreat I ran up, it wasn't a retreat, sorry, a workshop that I ran up in Auckland. So this is entirely new people. I don't know them. I'm co-facilitating with someone who's doing a kind of a yoga component. And I brought some brisk dance into it as the transition kind of after lunch into the afternoon. And there was this sort of shock and horror on their face. This very simple thing that I was asking them to do was to pick someone to dance with. So it was a confrontation. It was very alarming in a sense, but it was done. And I must say that at the end of the workshop, that was the most spoken about piece in the entire workshop. So simple and so subtle, yet so profound. And that was the thing that had the kind of voices going and chatting and this excitement having done that exercise. It was really incredible to see. And so I get excited about sharing this. I think it's got incredible potential, and um, this framework that Kylie's put together for this course and that we've been able to teach, yeah, it's a beautiful support and really can complement so much of what you as individuals bring. And I think that Kylie is one of the aspects that you wanted to talk to.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks, Rayven. Um, so I talk a lot in Bliss Dance about the power of and rather than the tyranny of all. And I feel like one of the reasons people are so confused and so frightened and anxious is because the whole world, our consensual reality right now, is divided and polarized. It's black or white, it's right or wrong, it's good or bad, or, and you've got to pick a side. And all the nuance and all the complexity between those polarities is lost. And so, what Bliss Dance does is it takes those polarities and it brings them into a beautiful harmonic whole. So, we often talk about, you know, agony and ecstasy, whereas in Bliss Dance, we'll call it extagony, or excitement and being, you know, fearful, and we'll say, well, let's call it exfrightment. And so a lot of bliss dance practices are dancing polarities and then seeing this new completely creative beauty that comes from bringing the opposites into holistic unity. So we do a lot of polarity dances in bliss dance. And another thing about bliss dance that's very different to many of the other dance modalities is that we actively and regularly dance our shadows. We will not avoid the shadow. We welcome the shadow. So we will do shadow dances because in the shadow, which is pretty much the biggest part of ourselves, it's like that iceberg, you know, where there's a tip looking, you know, above the ocean, but below is this huge iceberg, and that's the shadow. And so we dance it and we keep bringing our shadow into the light because we don't judge the shadow. We don't judge anything in bliss dance. Everything is welcome, and there's no hierarchy of this is a better state of being than that. We just say everything's equal, including the shadow. And so we go into the shadow and we retrieve those lost parts of ourselves. It's a soul reclamation process, and we bring it into the light. And when we do that, very often we reclaim pearls, like treasure beyond it, priceless treasures. So shadow dancing is it's a very important part of reclaiming lost parts of ourselves. And then the other thing that we dance a lot of is de-armoring all those defenses that we have against being vulnerable, against being seen, against being authentic and real, because we we learn how we are safe in ourselves. There's no safety out there. Life is inherently unsafe. Where we can find safety is by knowing ourselves and being at home and reclaiming all those lost parts of ourselves. And so we often dance these dances that help us to de-armor all this armoring that we've put on ourselves from past trauma, from conditioning, to protect ourselves. And it's not to rip it off, because that armoring is there for a reason and it's existential. But over time, as we become more and more whole, healthy, holy, they're all the same root word. So the more we become whole, the more we become holy. And that process is gradual and progressive, and we all go at our own pace. There's no peer pressure. And the invitation is always dance your edge. I'm going to dance my edge in the class. Rayven's going to dance his edge, and everyone is invited to dance their own edge between the known and the unknown, between pleasure and pain, excitement and fear, agony and ecstasy. And everyone's edge is different. So within a class, everyone is invited to find that edge, and only you know your edge. And that's what we call the stretch zone. And it's in the stretch zone that we heal, that we grow, and that we transform. And so by doing the bliss dance practices repeatedly, we begin to expand and evolve as beings. And I truly believe that bliss dance is a modality whose time has come, because it's total, because it welcomes everything. We're not trying to get to perfection. We're all perfectly imperfect. But what we are aiming for is to keep expanding and growing and transforming and evolving, so that as teachers, we can be of service to other beings, especially in the time of this great collapsing of all the edifices of economics, politics, society, religion. It's all collapsing and imploding because it's the end of an epoch called patriarchy, and we're birthing a new earth. And so I believe that as conscious beings, our role is to hold that center place to support others who are really struggling, and including ourselves, that we can hold ourselves and hold that middle way that is not splitting and polarizing or pushing what we don't understand or that is scary into the shadow and repressing it and burying it, because that's always going to come out at some point in a way that isn't beautiful and isn't helpful. So bliss dance is edgy in that sense. We are dancing our own edge, and we are dancing our shadow. We're dancing polarities. We're dancing de-armoring. And then as we start to do that more and more, we start to dance pleasure and sensuality. And our sexuality can express itself in beautiful, healthy ways. We can get more and more intimate with each other, more and more real. And over time, I mean, bliss dance has literally birthed and destroyed me so many times now, I can't even count. In the 15 years, I have died and rebirthed. I can't even recognize myself from 2 years ago. So it's this process of evolution through the practices. And the practices also very much depend on music. We emphasize music a lot in BlissDance. I will not tolerate mediocre music or music that doesn't support the practice that we're doing. So we have a big part of BlissDance called musicology, where you will learn about how to use music that is sublime, that really transmits a frequency to the dancers that you don't even have to speak, because the music itself is the facilitator. So music, the frequency of music, and applying it appropriately to the practices, which are all invitations to the dancers, that is a big part. And then how to transmit the invitation from your own lived experience. So I never teach anything I don't know from a direct experience. I don't teach from books. I don't teach from other teachers. I teach from what I know, because I've lived it and I've experienced it. And from that way, in that way, we transmit something to the dancers that isn't just learning or teaching. It's deeper than that. And it's very powerful. And we do that by creating as safe a space as possible and welcoming every aspect of a person. There's never any judging or shaming. And we also learn a lot about being trauma informed. This is a very important part when we're working with people's edge and with their shadow and with trauma. When it comes up in classes, we need to know how to hold it. We need to know how to be with it. And so BlissDance is stretching, it's edgy, and it's total. So it asks everything of you, everything. It's intense, and yet it's also very subtle. So it's got all of it. It's, you know, it seems paradoxical, but it really is. It's both intense and subtle. It's both edgy and exquisitely, sublimely, ecstatically beautiful. So I think I want to leave it at that for now. There's a lot more I can speak to about BlissDance, but a lot of it will come in the questions that Rayven and I will answer that you're bringing to the space. So take a deep breath from all that we've shared with you now. It's a lot, I know, but just take a deep breath, close your eyes, come back to your center. And then what is it that you would love to know? What is it that you would love to ask about BlissDance? And whatever we don't cover through your questions, if there's some more that we'd like to share, we'll do that at the end. And you might want to direct a question directly to me or to Rayven, or just generally, and then Rayven and I will see who feels to answer it. And if you'd like to ask a question, you can raise your hand if you're on video. If you're not on video, you can just raise an electronic hand. And we will do our best to answer your questions from our own experience of BlissDance. Shatiwa.
Thank you so much, Carly. Lovely to meet you, Ray. And read some new names and faces.
Just come a little closer to the mic, because
can you hear me?
That's better. Thank you.
I actually came to Berlin, and one of the reasons to be here was to further my studies. And I thought I'll go the mainstream route into psychology. And now I'm seeing this beautiful offer, and it really speaks to me. It's a complete yes. And still my mind is doing this thing with me, like, oh, now you're going into this hippy stuff, and you should be getting your psychology diploma, etc. But I just wanted to ask, so if I would do a 3-year full course in this, then I'm a qualified facilitator, and this is something that I could base my career on without having to go the path that I really don't actually want to go on. I don't know if my question makes sense.
I get it. Yeah, I think both Rayven and I will probably answer again from our own perspectives. So BlissDance has a lot of psychology built into it. There are 9 modules and they are very comprehensive. My first year students who've already done year 1, a lot of them are repeating year 1 because they said there was so much richness in year 1 that they couldn't possibly absorb it all. So they're repeating year 1 to get even more out of the course. So there's a very deep thread of psychology that is built into BlissDance. I did psychology at university, and there's this whole part about also being trauma informed and understanding the nervous system and the psyche and how they work through movement and music, and how we can drop people from the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and hypervigilant, which most people are living in that state almost all the time, into the parasympathetic and into that place of openness, receptivity, and safety where all learning happens, all healing happens, all transformation happens in the parasympathetic. And so we learn how to structure classes to bring people into the parasympathetic so that they can heal, transform, grow, expand. And so to do that, we have to have an understanding of psychology. We have to have an understanding, where does armoring come from? How does it form in the first place? How do we de-armor the body? And how do we create safety? And how do we help people to turn within so they find the answers themselves? We're not healing anybody in BlissDance. We are providing a container and an optimum environment within which they do their own soul reclamation, they do their own healing. And so you will definitely have a very deep immersion into psychology and into spirituality and into shamanism, into the, dealing and working with the invisible realms, working with consciousness, working with trance, regressive and expansive trance, the breath, archetypes. It's really, really comprehensive. And then there's many, many references to other books and teachers and videos that you can then go and explore as well. And depending on where your interest eventually falls, you might find you're more interested in the shamanic aspect of BlissDance, or the sexual aspects of BlissDance, conscious sexuality, awakened sexuality. And then you can go further, with your own studies and go and explore that more. So I would say, knowing you, Shatiwa, as I do, because you've done several courses with me, is that I've called you an edge walker. You walk the edges. And I really feel BlissDance is very suited to you because of that aspect of yourself. So yeah, I think I can say hand on heart that 3 years of doing BlissDance training versus doing an academic career or an academic training will benefit you more, knowing you as I know. Rayven, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I can share from my perspective, absolutely, because I've always been in a position of being the person that people come to share their kind of deepest feelings, and drop into vulnerability right from when I was a high school child. And there was some point at which I went, oh gosh, I mean, that's a huge amount of responsibility, and I'm really concerned that maybe I get it wrong. I wouldn't want to hurt someone when they do this. So I started exploring into these different options, and of course, psychology comes up. And I time and time again went, this is just my personal experience with this. I'm not saying this is right for everyone, but for me, it was like, I don't know, something just doesn't feel right about psychology per se. And having said that, I have studied some psychology. And I think it's really useful to have studied some psychology. What I didn't find useful, because I've tried again to look into it, is when it starts to get into the real sort of academic research, scientific kind of stuff. Like that for me was it's just too heady. Like I said earlier, I'm quite a head person as it is. I'm looking for more embodied ways of expressing. What I have done is a training in counseling that was body based, And that also informed a lot. That informs a lot of what I do through BlissDance, actually, because it's exactly like Carly was saying. Is this invitation that we create for people to drop into their own awareness. That I'm not trying to analyze someone or trying to work out what's going on for them and make it right or solve it or anything like that. It's never been part of my reality. It's more kind of dropping on the one hand, being in a place of deep empathy and support in that way. But anything that guides a person into their own wisdom, into their own knowing, into their own insight, for me feels infinitely more empowering than whatever the alternative might be. And I don't want to say what that is because I don't know. I haven't done it. And the other aspect that I discovered for me is though I'm particularly good on that one-on-one holding space for someone's deep emotional experience, I get a lot more personally, or it certainly feels like where my truth wants to flow is in the group facilitation stuff. And certainly that I get from BlissDance in a tremendous way. So even if I'm bringing an awareness and understanding of psychology into it, it's useful information. It's very valuable information, especially as a parent. My gosh. I'm still going to bring it back to the body and back to that. What is it that's going to create an opportunity in the external to mirror something back to the self, to the individual? And I was kind of in the preparation for this call. This thought came to me about this training that we're doing over a year. What are some of the aspects to it? And I was kind of drawing on a parallel of I've been working a bit with AIs and this idea of prompting an AI to give you something. And in a way, one of the things we're learning to do is we're creating prompts, but instead of for artificial intelligence, we're creating prompt for human intelligence. And it's not for me to get that intelligence, but those prompts are for the individuals that we're giving it to. And those prompts, Carly's mentioned already, the kind of invitation that we express and the music that we're choosing to support that. These are all prompts that dive a person much deeper into their human wisdom, and to be able to mine that and allow the space for that to bubble up for contemplation. It's not that the mind's not useful. The mind's, in my experience, very useful as a reflective process rather than a coming before to try and solve the problems. We do a lot better having had an experience and then reflecting on it afterwards and going, okay, what can I draw from that? What felt right, wrong? Just put those labels onto it. But there's some kind of knowing that comes through of like, yes, this is where my energy wants to flow, or this is the next action that I want to take, and it's coming from a more mindful place.
Yeah, I'd love to add to that, Rayven, that BlissDance really believes in the wisdom of the body, and that the body contains all the answers. The mind is welcome because it's a part of the body intelligence, but it's not the only intelligence, and it's not even the most important intelligence. The heart intelligence and our sexuality, our erotic, creative life force energy that's been so stunted and shamed and disconnected from our brains is so important. So we work with Kundalini energy, we work with our sexual creative life force energy, we work with our heart energy, our heart intelligence. And then the mind is the last part that might execute a choice or an action. But first, it's the felt sense. First, it's the body wisdom. And our sexuality is a very big and important part of that. And the other thing I'd like to say is that if BlissDance was a psychological modality, because you get all the different behavioral psychology, Freudian psychology, Jungian psychology, etc. BlissDance is the closest I could align it to psychology is Jungian psychoanalyst, because it's so total. The Jungian approach is body, mind, heart, spirit, soul, and the dreams as well. They work with dreams a lot. So if you wanted to align it to any of the psychology streams, I would align it most closely with the Jungian approach to psychology. Yeah. Yeah. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question about BlissDance?
There's a
Yes.
question in the chat. Just
Oh, is there a question in the chat? Anne-Marie, having connectivity question. So sorry, Alona, will come to you now. What happens at a typical BlissDance session, and just how is it different from the training you offer? Okay, so how is this a live session different to the training? That's a great question. So a typical BlissDance class, depending on whether it's a drop-in class, and that could be online like we had this past week, or it could be in person, like the weekly or monthly BlissDance classes in the Kalk Bay Community Hall in Cape Town. So you have in-person drop-in, you have online drop-in classes. Then you have workshops. You might do a workshop over an entire weekend, for example, on consent and boundaries, how to set boundaries and how to know your yes and no. That could be a whole weekend workshop using BlissDance practices to explore that. And then you might have a 7-day or 8-day retreat, residential, where you go deeper and deeper and deeper into the tapestry that is the map of BlissDance. It covers lots of different parts of BlissDance, of life. So for me, if I had to generalize what a typical session is like, I would say usually it begins with high energy discharging of stress and contraction, and to really discharge what's keeping us from meeting ourselves. So we might do a lot of tribal dancing, we might do a lot of shaking right up front. And often it's in my classes anyway, I like to focus on you, your experience, your condition. How are you feeling right now? Where are you right now? So that you form a connection with yourself first. So you get really intimate with self. First of all, by getting rid of the stress that might be clouding you and disturbing you or distracting you from being here now, fully here now. And then once that connection with self is made, and once we've discharged a bit of stress and tension, then we start dropping into the parasympathetic, into the more vulnerable, tender, gentle places. And from that place, we start to open up into connection with the other. So it might be, if it's in person, with one other person. And we might do a fingertip dance where you're just connecting through the fingertips and your eyes are closed and you're just following the arising. Nobody is doing and nobody's giving and nobody's receiving. It's an arising, and you're just meeting each other in this arising. So then we might go on to do another BlissDance practice. For example, we have something called the angel dance. The angel has your back dance, where a dancer stands behind another dancer and gently just touches them as they dance, so that they can feel that there's support behind them, but it's not directing their movement. It's not trying to control the dancer's movements, but the dancer can feel these little wingtips just touching them, just feeling that there's someone behind them, and the feeling that one has someone who has my back. I'm not alone. That's a very beautiful transmission to receive. I'm not alone. There is someone who has my back. So we go into these more vulnerable, tender, beautiful, connective practices, but only once we've connected here. We home, and I'm at, I know where I am right now. I might be feeling like I don't want too much connection because I'm feeling I want to really spend more time with myself. So then I might just dance with myself when we invite connection with the other. There's no have to anything in BlissDance. So that would be generally, and I'm really generalizing now, that we would go from sympathetic, high energy dancing to discharge. Then we drop into the parasympathetic, and that's when we start to do more connection dances. But that's not a rule. It's not a hard and fast rule. For example, we might start with an opening circle of high energy tribal dancing where we're going, whoa, and stamping our feet and up. and we're dancing together as a tribe. And that could be the discharge dances, where we are in connection, but it's more like a tribal dance of not so much intimacy, but it's a dance of high energy. Yeah, and Rayven, you're saying with intentionality, yeah, normally expressed through a theme or a topic. Very often the journey, whether it's a retreat journey or a workshop journey or a drop-in class, has a theme, and that theme we explore. So last week we explored soft like wax, and to get soft like wax, to melt and dissolve into the moment as the beloved, we went through quite a high energy beginning. I don't know if you remember, but we went through quite a lot of high energy dances, chaos, to then we were able to genuinely soften. So is anything else you would like to say about that, Rayven?
Yeah, not about that specifically, but just in terms of how it differs to the training. Yeah, I see the training as being sort of two parallel aspects. One is the personal journey that we go through by doing the BlissDance practices throughout the year. But then in parallel to that, what we're doing is we're giving information exactly like Carly's just described. This form of dance that has this particular quality that could create this kind of effect. Working with this particular thing of say ancestry, and we'll go into depth on what those, there's a whole map that Carly's created that's used as a support for creating these experiences, and we go and we explain what those are. There's aspects where we go into the technical of going, okay, whether this is something that you're doing in person or you're doing online, there's an element of how we're going to, what are the technologies that are we using and how do we use them so that we can feel comfortable being able to facilitate in these ways. Knowledge about the music and how the music works and different qualities of music and how to recognize the difference and to recognize what is quality music that Carly referred to before, to not compromise. To have an idea of like, okay, I'm trying to create this kind of experience that's supported by this sort of theme. You've got an idea because you're bringing yourself into it to go, the music needs to have this kind of quality. And then you start to go, okay, and you start to listen, you start to hear music in a very different way, in terms of what the beats are doing and what the tempo is doing and what kind of instrumental elements are coming through and what that's going to do to a nervous system. And in terms of where you are in that.
Yeah. Sorry, Rayven, does it have words? Do you use purely instrumental? So there's so many different aspects. And then one of the things you'll learn when you create a whole journey is like you'll find like such a brilliant track for this particular practice. But then when you listen to it with the other tracks that you've chosen for the other practices, it's like, no, it doesn't work. Now I've got to find another track that can fit. And then it's very iterative, this process. And as you bring in another track, then it changes something at the beginning. And then it's like, oh, now I've got to, and you work with it. It's like massaging and massaging until the whole thing hangs together seamlessly. And that takes a lot of practice. And I've evolved so much with music as I've been teaching now for nearly 15 years. My musicology my ear has been so fine-tuned, and I've made hundreds of mistakes in those 15 years. Because again, it's not about being perfect, but we learn as we go. We keep learning, and it's about getting better and better. It's that expansion. It's getting more skilled, more refined. It's not about perfection, but we want to get better and better at our craft. And music I believe the music is the facilitator. I'm just augmenting that music with my voice and with, transmitting a practice, for example. And I'll give you a brilliant example of transmission. Some of you were at Spirit Fest. I know Ilona was there. And I was doing the opening ceremony, and there were probably 500 to 600 people there. And when I started the opening ceremony, everyone was standing in lines and they were just staring at me, like this entire massive marquee of people. They looked like deer in the headlight. They were just staring at me. Now, I could have done an opening ceremony in many ways, but I use music and movement always. So for me, opening ceremony is music and movements. That's how I chose to do ceremony, is through bliss dance. And so in the beginning, nobody was really moving, and nobody was really, present. And I think a lot of people were new; they'd never been to Spirit Fest, and they were anxious and nervous. And one of the things Shakti always taught was, if they are not dropping or they're not receiving the invitation, you have to embody it. And not only do you have to embody it, but you've got to drop deeper than anyone else. So I realized that I had to start embodying what I was inviting everyone at the opening ceremony to, so that they could feel it. And by my doing it, I knew that then they felt they had permission. Like, so I just dropped deeper and deeper and deeper into what I was inviting, and I started embodying it more and more. And suddenly it was like 500 or 600 caged tigers just broke out of their cages, and there was this explosion of energy and vitality. And once the ice was broken and I started to invite connection and playfulness, everybody was doing it. And by the end, the whole marquee was just rocking. And I got so many people coming to me afterwards saying, that was amazing and the best opening ceremony ever and just incredible. But if I had frozen because everybody was staring at me and they seemed quite frozen in the beginning and nervous, then it would have just been a really shit opening ceremony. It would have been a disaster. But by my really going into the shaking and the chaos and playfulness, and I was playing with the drummers who were accompanying me, everybody eventually cracked. Everybody opened up, and the connections that formed as a result of that opening ceremony meant that the whole of Spirit Fest became this place of deep connection and gentleness and meeting of each other. I don't know if Ilona, you would agree with that. Were you at the opening ceremony? I'm not sure if you were there. Yeah, so that's how powerful it is when we transmit rather than facilitate. And it's about embodiment. We must embody what it is we're asking, and not only that, we must embody it more than anyone else.
Ilona, you had a question.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me clearly. We've got a storm outside here. Yes, indeed, Kylie, the opening ceremony was incredible, and we could feel how everybody gradually sort of get out of their shells and just started to connect with each other. It was a magnificent experience. A question from my side. I have been to expression dance sessions some years ago, like 5 years ago. I've been to 3 or 4 sessions, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful to feel how one connects with others and feel how your own boundaries melt. There was also some dances where people came very close into my personal space and I went close into their personal space, which I would not normally, under normal circumstances, would have allowed to come into my personal space that closely. And at the time it felt okay because it was absolutely in the flow of things. But a day or two after this dance session, my being said this was uncomfortable, and I didn't know how to set the boundary. And that actually then became a thing that I didn't go back to the dance sessions in spite of knowing how powerful this modality is. So that's just a question from my side. I experienced those things. I don't know if other people experience that, or is it something that you build resilience for, or am I just like a little bit closed and I'm generally gradually will be opening to, inviting people in? That's just my question, please.
That's a great question. It's a great question. My feeling is that sometimes in other modalities, there isn't time given for you to really connect with yourself. How much connection do you want? What kind of connection do you want? How close do you want to be? How intimate and how far do you want people to be? So that check-in with self at the beginning is very important. And it can change from class to class. One class you may want a lot of intimacy and closeness, and in another class you may not want it. And that's why I say surfing your own edge is what we invite always. The edge between what is comfortable for you and then what's uncomfortable. So if you stay in your comfort zone, which is, okay, I'm very uncomfortable with touch, so I'm not going to touch anyone, and you always stay like that, that's kind of armoring. You know, it's rigid and it can't move. And if you overstep your boundary all the time, if you bungee jump over your you know, where you are and what you're comfortable with, then you're going to traumatize yourself. And that's often where, you know, you follow the group dynamic and you get sort of carried away with the group pressure. And then afterwards there's shame, afterwards there's doubt, you second guess yourself, because probably what happened was you overstepped your own edge. So it's that edge is, you constantly surfing the edge between not staying in your comfort zone, being able to go onto that edge of comfort and discomfort, of pleasure and, ooh, this is maybe a bit, ooh, and only you know that edge. Now, I always say in my classes, there is no peer pressure. If some people are having an orgasmic, amazing, blissful dance in that corner, but you're feeling really sad and you're grieving something that's come up, and that's what your reality is, that is welcome as much as the orgasmic. It's not like this is better and that's worse. And so a big part of bliss dance is know thyself, and to thine own self be true. And from moment to moment, because as I say, sometimes we feel like this, other times we feel like that. But as long as you're on your edge, you're not overstepping yourself and traumatizing yourself, and you're not staying in your comfort zone where you're never going to grow, you're never going to evolve if you just stay in your comfort. So it's that edge. And because some classes don't invite that, and there is that sort of sense of I've got to do what everybody else is doing, then there's the sense of I've betrayed myself, or I've somehow lost myself, and that's not healthy, you know. So we always working with consent and boundaries, unlike armoring, are, I like to think of them as organic and like a jellyfish. You know, they taking information in and giving information out, and it's like this. So it's changing moment to moment, and only you are the one regulating it, nobody else, not the facilitator and not the other dancers. So self-regulation is really encouraged and developed in bliss dance, and everybody's level of comfort with touch and intimacy is included in the class. It's not like we only work with advanced people and experienced people and bugger the beginners. We don't care, and bugger those who are risk averse. It's like everybody, because it's unique to your own edge, is welcome in the class, and you get to learn more and more how to self-regulate, know yourself, and then through knowing yourself deeper and deeper in each moment, you get to say your no and you get to say your yes. And so we encourage sovereignty, the development of agency and sovereignty. And this is why the foundation year is called for personal and practitioner mastery. So you start to develop personal mastery around your boundaries, around what you want and what you don't want. Another thing that's core to bliss dance, we ask all the time, what do you really, really, really want? In the long term, but also right now. What do you want? And to check in with that desire and follow that. You follow your desire. It might be I'm going to dance the whole class on my own because I'm always in service to people and I'm always in connection with people. And what I need is to be solitary and to really dance my own dance with myself. And you are perfectly welcome to do that. Nobody's going to pressure you to do otherwise. We might invite it and you go, no thanks. And your no is equally accepted. Your yes is equally accepted as much as your no. Yeah. Does that feel good? Does that feel good for you, Ilona? I think you've frozen. Oh, there you are. Yeah. And so we bring that out very overtly and very consciously. And I repeat it almost every single time in the upfront agreements, whether it's a drop-in, but especially if it's in person. If it's drop-in online, we're dancing with ourselves, so there's not that possibility of overstepping your own boundary. You're dancing your own dance in your own private space. And that's an opportunity to start developing that self-knowledge by just being with yourself and meeting yourself. That's the real benefit of online work. You still get the benefit of the group energy. You feel it, even though you're not seeing people and you're dancing in your own space, but it develops self-knowledge. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anybody else have a question about anything to do with the training? Other than costing, because that's Rianne's side of things. But anything to do with the content of the training or the benefits of training in this modality. There's Tiffany, Jardine, don't know if I'm saying that right. Rido, Benita, we'd love to hear from you. You don't even have to put on your video if you don't want to. You can just put up an electronic hand if you'd like to ask a question. And we're finishing at 8:30, so it's 90 minutes. If you have to go, you'll get the recording. So if you miss anything, you can love and leave us, and you will get the recording of the full call. So
Just wanted to add a few things that came through for me, following from what you said, is that the first is I'm going to take into consideration the experience of the group. And so there's certain ways I'm going to craft a bliss dance that is going to take that into consideration. So if it's a group of dancers that I'm familiar with, they've danced a lot together, then I'm going to probably introduce stuff that's maybe a little bit more edgy, a little bit more intimate. But I wouldn't do that with a large group, particularly like at a festival where we've got very little ability to manage the creating of the container. But just new groups as well in general just would have a lot more introductory kind of dances that'll just gradually lead people into this, without it necessarily feeling too quick or forced or anything like that. So a lot of the bliss dance practices in a way are training for these sorts of things. We've got specific dances that allow you to feel into your yes and your no, allow you to feel into the tension of desire and longing or resistance, and to be able to play with those polarities. And one of the things that I appreciate about the space, I've said it already, is that it's embodied. It's out of the mind. We're so used to speaking things and rationalizing stuff, so it can be a little bit challenging when you come into the space initially and we go, this is a no talking space, and yet we still have to negotiate a consent process. And that can seem a little bit like, well, how do we do that if we can't talk about things? But that's sensitivity, and that's for me, that sensitivity is, I don't know, I can't create a more powerful word to just express how important that is for me, that as a society, we've kind of lost sensitivity, that we actually don't know how to listen to our bodies, or we're listening and we're not trusting it. And to be able to feel into what another person is expressing to us through their movement, through sensing into their nervous systems, their facial expressions and stuff like that, and to go, is this particular action invited? Is it welcomed? Is it, yeah, and to learn to move with that, and to be able to be very clear in our expressions as to what our desire is. That question that Carly brought it. What do we most deeply desire is, and then how do we most express that so that other people know what it is without necessarily relying on words, because words are limited. We create a lot of reliance on words, but when you go into the science studies of how effective we are as humans communicating through words, it's not very good. We're not good at it.
So much
But we
more
have
is
a
actually communicated through body language, as you say, eyes, expression. Am I opening? Am I defending? It's and learning to read, other people's body language and energetics and our own, and learning to communicate effectively and clearly through gesture, through expression, really starts to empower us to be so much better at communicating our own needs as well as receiving the needs of others. So yeah, we become way more skilled at navigating one another and relating more beautifully with each other, without the needing to rely on words, which, as Rayven says, are very limited compared to the full range that's available to us in terms of communicating with one another. And of course, in classes, there's also opportunity for sharing and for feedback. So we do use words. We're just silent when we are on the dance floor. And when we're dancing, we don't use words. But we do have lots of opportunity to share and to give feedback and to ask questions. That's
yeah,
also,
again, that's using it from that witness reflective place rather than trying to solve it before we've done anything. And my general answer to a lot of things is, if you're sitting with a question, we can try and think about it, go and dance it.
yeah.
And I work with something that I call the celibacy principle, which is you go into space with a celibacy mindset. It's not about sexuality per se, but about, I'm going into this space to not engage in this way. That's my limit. That's my agreement with myself, because I want to drop into the full experience of that, whatever celibacy is for you in that moment. So that might be like, I'm just going to dance on my own, as Cardi said, and make that entirely, full permission to just dance on your own, if that is what you're going in there to explore and experience. And if you go in with that clarity, and that's a celibacy principle, is that I'm celibately not going to interact with anyone. It gives you the safety to be in the fullness of that experience, and then see what rises. And that could be a full range of things. We don't know until we actually go in with that witness element to see ourselves through the reflection of the movement.
Yeah. So it's the and again. So you might dance a solitary dance and celibate dance, but be in the group. So it's an and, it's solitary, and there's still the energy of the group. There's the field. And you might, while going in with a celibacy mindset and a singular mindset, start to notice what comes up for you. Might be that you feel left out. And maybe you feel left out in your life a lot, but you're not noticing that you feel left out. Or maybe it's a huge relief to not have to keep worrying about other people and thinking about them and just giving to yourself. And maybe you'll go through a whole range of experiences. But the beautiful thing is, because it's embodied, in life, when those things come up in your life, you immediately know them, because your body wakes up to it. It goes, oh my God, I'm going through that left out feeling, because you danced it. So when it happens in your life, you can make choices in the moment that maybe would be different if it was playing unconsciously. So yeah, so I always say that our life informs our dance, and our dance informs our life, and our life informs our dance, and our dance informs our life. And that's, again, why we grow and evolve so beautifully when we dance regularly. And I see, Anne-Marie, you've asked a question, which is, when will we start the next course and or retreat? So the training, the 1-year training for personal and practitioner mastery, begins mid-May. And it's on Wednesdays. It's every second Wednesday. Occasionally there's a master class, which is also on a Wednesday. And occasionally we have a study hall once every trimester. So there are some additional classes, but as a general rule, it's every second Wednesday starting mid-May. And we have 2 full month vacations. So we have 3 months, we have a holiday of a month. We have another 3 months, we have a holiday of a month. And then we have another 3 months. So it's 9 months of training, but 12 months in total. And so mid-May is when we start the first year training. The next retreat is going to be, actually, it's a non-training retreat, but it's going to be happening in Greece on the island of Lesbos in November. It's a 7-night, 8-day retreat. And the theme is to be Zorba the Buddha. So it's about learning through pleasure rather than through discipline and hardship and suffering. It's about how can we grow and learn through pleasure, through enjoyment, through savoring. So my intention for that particular retreat is to be able to take that into our lives, where we start to be able to work from a place of effortless ease, to enjoy every moment of every day, whether it's something difficult or something easy, that we bring an orientation of savoring, of relishing, of pleasure to every moment, regardless of whether it's hard or easy, whether it's grief or joy, that there's this orientation around being at ease and embracing and welcoming it all. So that's in September in Lesbos. And then the training retreat, which we're not sure yet will be open to the public, but for all the first year students and third year students, is from the 3rd to the 10th of December at Body Kaya. So that's the BlissDance first year and third year training retreat. And if there's space, we may open it to other Bliss dancers and even people who've never done BlissDance. It all depends on space, but it's definitely a training retreat, and it's part of the first year and third year requirement to be able to get your certification for having done first year, or indeed having completed the full 3-year training. So that's Body Kaya, South Africa in December. And then Rayven is doing a BlissDance class. When is that, Rayven? In Kalk Bay?
That's over the Easter weekend, on the Friday evening. So that's, I think it's the 18th of April. Kalk Bay, yeah.
So if you've signed up for this gather round, we'll send out the details of all of those classes. Then there's also Valentina, who offers a beautiful and very sensual BlissDance class once a month. I don't have the details of that. I know Rito goes to that quite often. Beautiful, beautiful classes, an opportunity to keep deepening and practicing in person. So there are quite a few opportunities, especially if you live in Cape Town, to have an in-person experience. And then there's the training, and then there's my non-training retreat in September on the island of Lesbos. So we'll give you all of those opportunities. So yeah, does that answer your question, Anne-Marie? Alona? Do you want to ask a question? Just unmute yourself.
Yes, please. I would like to just add, at the Spirit Fest, the couples workshop that you've done, to me that was one of the most wonderful experiences. First, the women dancing their masculine and the men dancing their feminine. That was really incredible. And then the eye gazing afterwards. I mean, we were quite a large group of people who did not know each other at all, but the gentle facilitating was so powerful that after the eye gazing session, we were all of us completely comfortable with each other, and that beautiful group huddle that just, or puddle, what was that, that just spontaneously formed, was a very, very powerful experience for me, and I know for everybody who was there. So thank you for opening that possibilities, and for giving us that opportunity to experience something really, really profound. Thank you for that, really.
Yeah, thank you, Alona. That was the Sacred Union session that we held at in a festival environment, which you would think is very difficult to create a container and safety. As you say, people don't know each other. There's a lot of distraction going on all around. And yet within an hour and a half, people dropped so deep. People were crying tears of joy, tears of regret, tears of sadness, tears of ecstasy, the vulnerability that people were able to share with one another, and the incredible tenderness that opened up like a beautiful flower was so incredible. And it was using BlissDance practices. And you'll have noticed, Ilona, that the music was very carefully curated to support people's experience, to support the invitation, right? So the music played a huge role in helping people to open up and share and be vulnerable and be witnessed. And a big part of BlissDance, as I've mentioned, is the bringing together into sacred union the polarities. And so this was a dance of masculine and feminine, and yes, represented by man, woman, but as you say, the women dance their yang and the men dance their yin, and because we all have an inner masculine and feminine, but then there's also the very real trauma between men and women through thousands of years of patriarchy. And so the practices that we did were BlissDance practices, and you saw how powerful they were. And that's in a festival environment where there were a lot of people and we didn't know each other. Most of us didn't know the others that were there. And that is an example of how you can use BlissDance in so many different ways. Rayven's spoken about using it in group settings. So that was a group setting. I actually do a lot of person-to-person and couple session work, both online and in person. There's barely ever a session that I do where I haven't brought in a BlissDance practice or a BlissDance meditation. It's like it's so interwoven with everything I do. And I think that's one last thing I would really like to stress. BlissDance is an open source technology. And what I mean by that is everybody can use it how they want to use it. So if, let's say, you're a family constellation practitioner and you do the first year training, which doesn't qualify you as a BlissDance facilitator, but you can do a taste of bliss with Ilona or a taste of bliss with Benita, and you bring in the practices, or you can call it anything you want to call it, but you're using the BlissDance practices in your practice. Whether it's with your staff in a company, you have an early morning dance session, once a week or something like that. You can weave in BlissDance into what you are already doing. You might be working with children, you might be working with pensioners, you might be working with neurodivergence, you might be working with prisoners, only women, only men. You can weave BlissDance into everything and bring your own signature, your own hallmark. We do not want to create mini-me's. We're not like I'm not going to actually name some of the dance modalities where they're quite strict and they want you to conform to their way of doing it. In BlissDance, we want you to bring your heart, your soul, your sexuality, your spirit to whatever it is you're offering. And it's very tight. So you might think because it's open source, it's like everything to everybody and it's a bit vanilla. It's not. Because it's got its lineage as totality tantra and it's steeped in totality tantra, and because it's edgy for everyone. I surf my edge every single time I give a class, every time, no exception. Because it's edgy, it's not bland. And yet, so it's this and it's open and it's tight. It's both. And that, for me, is one of the beauties of BlissDance. When Shakti trained me, she said, Carly, go and make it your own. She didn't want me to go and be another Shakti. I couldn't be another Shakti, even if I tried. But she gave me her blessing to take it and make it mine. And that's what we want to invite all of you to if you do the training, whether you do first year, second year, or third year. We want you to make it your own, whilst at the same time keeping it tight according to this balancing of polarities, and bringing in shadow work and bringing in de-armoring. That's what makes BlissDance versus perhaps other practices. Practical question from Shatiwe. For training retreat, is it better to fly into Joburg or Cape Town? It's better to fly straight to Cape Town if you can. And you're in Berlin, so you should be able to get a flight. You might go via a hub, but yeah, to Cape Town. It's a hour-and-a-half's drive from Cape Town, the retreat. Anything else you'd like to know? Or comment on? You might have a comment that you'd like to make. You're so welcome. We've got another few minutes, another 4 minutes. What I will say as well while we're waiting is if you are wanting to sign up, do take advantage of the early bird, which is, it ends in March. If you pay a lump sum, you get a 13% discount on top of the early bird if you do a once-off payment for the whole course. But otherwise, you can do monthly repayments. But the early bird is really not to be missed because it does give you quite a substantial savings. If you are wanting to apply for a scholarship or a bursary, please contact Rayven. And if you want to have a one-on-one with either Rayven or myself, there's a link on the website, on the Shakti Shiva Academy website, to book a Calendly appointment, because that's an app where you can go into our diaries and book a half-hour discovery call with us. And that's a free call, no obligation whatsoever to ask anything else, maybe very specific to your own interest and your own path. And you're very welcome to make that discovery call with one of us. Rayven, anything you'd like to add in closing?
Yeah, I'm just, for myself, super excited to do this for the second time. I think the first time was a great experience. The kind of feedback that we got from that has been testimony to it, and to run through it a second time, I'm sure it will have evolved, no doubt. And lovely to be able to share a little bit of what we're doing. So thank you everyone who's been on the call and those who listen to it later. And yeah, also outside of this call, if you want to send us messages, you'd answer in any way that I can.
And I think last thing I'd like to say, because this is something that comes up when people ask me about the training, is how, when BlissDance is all about connection and intimacy and relating and sexuality, how on earth do we train in it online? And when Rayven asked me to develop the training, to develop the theory and the course itself, the course content, I was convinced it couldn't be done. And I kept saying to her, it can't be done. It can't be done. BlissDance is in person. There's no way we can do this online. Partly because I was absolutely terrified of what she was asking me to do, but partly because I genuinely didn't believe it could be done. And then when Eskom started with these power outages, I thought, this is it. I've got an escape. We can't do it. You're going to have all these power outages. It's impossible. But what I discovered was, again, I had to stretch. I had to grow. I was so uncomfortable with this huge ask that Rayven trusted me with. And in just facing my fear and doing it anyway, what I discovered was, one, that the course content was so rich. It was pouring out of me. I didn't even know it was there. And secondly, it's amazing how we can connect online. It's amazing how the group, the cohort became such good friends, and there's such deep connections between everybody who was on the course, and it can be done. And it just added a huge dimension to my skill set, having to train and dance online and learning how to optimize the way we can connect online, like having, these chat rooms and having grouping people into, what are they called? Those little groups that you can create where you can go breakouts. You can go and dance as a threesome. You can go and share as a twosome. So there's a lot that we can do online. And then, of course, we have the in-person retreat. And that is essential because that's where you really get to meet in person all the other students. And it's an 8-day retreat, so we drop very, very deep. And it's a huge transmission. So the in-person retreat is an essential part of the online training. But you will be amazed. You'll be amazed at how we can do BlissDance online. Plus, we get to meet people from all over the world.
Yeah, I think one of things for me with the retreat is that we did in Spain is you arrive and you arrive to, by and large, a whole lot of familiar people because we had journeyed for this year before, and although many of them I'd never met in person before, it was incredibly special to arrive and just go, oh, familiarity, this ability just to drop straight into that retreat space so quickly because of that level of familiarity. The nervous system just relaxed super quick.
Mm. Yeah, so in year 1, there will be people from the first training who are redoing it. And then there will be the new dancers, and it will be a whole new journey together because you can't step into the same river twice. And so both Rayven and I are very excited to be undertaking this journey again, but it's going to be totally different and yet also the same. It's an and again. Ah. Deep, deep gratitude for all of you showing up. Thank you so much. You can get the recording of this call if you want to listen to it again. You're welcome to book a discovery call. You're welcome to register and commit right now or whenever you're ready. But just bear in mind the early bird ends at the end of March. And we'd love to have you. We really would. Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Take care, everyone.